Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing the book George VI and Elizabeth by Sally Bidell Smith, and this is a biography about George VI and his wife Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who are the mother and father of Queen Elizabeth II, and it starts off with their childhoods and then ends at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. I would have liked to go on longer because Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, I'm just going to call her the Queen Mother from now on. The Queen Mother lived another 50 years after her husband died. So I would have liked to know more about that particular thing because she was in the background while stuff was going on. So she would probably had her own opinions on things that were going on, and especially in like 1992 with the annus horribilis that happened. But I really enjoyed this book. The narrator is really good. It is Rosalind Landor, and that narrator is a favorite of both myself and my friend. So I found it really wonderful that King George and Queen Elizabeth did their part in World War II and worked with Churchill, who stopped, Hitler from coming into Britain, because he might have come into Britain because there were some bombings and things like that in in Britain, I believe. And yeah, so they did their duty and helped during World War II to stop the madman that was Hitler. And I I'm gonna say something interesting, something amusing, and then something I guess admirable I enjoyed about this book. The first thing I found interesting, maybe this is because I was a public health master's student, um, even though Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, did live a long time, there were a few times during important events where she had a lot of bronchial problems. Um, so I just found that interesting, even though she lived to be I think she lived to be almost 100 and, let's see, 102? Like 101? 101. She lived to be 101. And then something I found interesting, I actually found this in a documentary, but it goes into this in the book as well. The king and queen did visit Franklin Delano Roosevelt before World War II and Hitler did his thing, and they were worried about Hitler, so they wanted to work with the Americans, and they visited American-y things, and they were having a banquet at Franklin Roosevelt's, I guess, summer home, I guess you'd call it, and he wanted, Franklin Roosevelt wanted to have a nice thing for the king and queen, but also wanted to introduce him to the hot dog. And the president's mother, who was still alive, she was like 80, 85 or something like that. She's like, "You are out of your mind. This is the king and queen of England. You can't give them hot dogs. Like, what's wrong with you?" And apparently King George VI liked them so much he ate 3 of them, which I find really amusing. And one thing that I find really admirable is that King George VI, even though he suffered with a stammer, he was still able to do his duty, and he plucked up the courage and did what he needed to do in order to boost morale for the people, especially during World War II. And he worked through his speech impediment and probably his fears as well. I'm sure they said that the microphone, he hated that, and he did a lot of things to alleviate his stammer and also his stress. He worked with Lionel Logue, and that to me is really admirable that he did his duty despite his speech impediment. So I really enjoyed this book. If you were into this time period or royalty in general, I recommend this book. I think it is a a good book. I would have liked it to go a little bit longer, just because the Queen Mother lived to the ripe old age of 100. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. And one thing I forgot to say is that in order to distinguish Queen Elizabeth, the wife of King George VI, and their daughter Queen Elizabeth II, they call Queen Elizabeth II, they call her Lilibet, and then they call the Queen Mother Elizabeth. So it's not as confusing. In case you're wondering if you're going to get confused, and she does talk about the different names used in the book. So she does go over that before you really start into the story. So that is all I want to say about this book, and I enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.